late 1960s in California was a time of cultural upheaval, political protests, and a society caught between the innocence of the post-war era and the turbulence of the counterculture revolution. Against this backdrop of change, an unknown figure emerged who would terrorize the Bay Area and beyond, leaving behind a chilling legacy that has fascinated and horrified people for decades. Known only as the Zodiac Killer, this mysterious individual taunted police, toyed with the media, and etched his name into the annals of true crime history through a series of brutal murders, cryptic letters, and a persona carefully crafted to instill fear. What made the Zodiac case so haunting was not just the violence, but the enigma surrounding the killer's identity, motives, and the unsolved puzzles he left behind. More than 50 years later, his story remains one of the most gripping and unsettling in American criminal history. From the first attacks near Vallejo to the infamous letters signed with the crosshair-like symbol, the Zodiac cultivated a dark mythology around himself. He was not content to simply kill. He wanted recognition, power, and control over the narrative. Newspapers received chilling notes filled with strange symbols, ciphers, and bold claims of responsibility. The public devoured every detail, as fear spread that anyone could become his next victim. Unlike other killers of his time, the Zodiac thrived on the spotlight. He positioned himself as a ghost in the system, always one step ahead, his identity obscured behind riddles. As police departments scrambled and journalists clamored for the latest updates, the Zodiac stood as a terrifying reminder of how a single man, shrouded in secrecy, could bring a region to its knees. The Zodiac story begins on the night of December 20, 1968, when high school students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were shot and killed on Lake Herman Road near Vallejo. The couple had pulled over on a quiet stretch of road, perhaps to enjoy a peaceful evening together, but instead became the Zodiac's first known victims. Investigators at the time struggled to make sense of the crime. A quiet suburban community had been shattered by an execution-style killing with no clear motive. Rumors swirled that it might have been a random act of violence or connected to local disputes, but in reality, it was the start of a chilling pattern. The randomness of the attack was what made it so frightening. There seemed to be no reason, no logic, just pure malice. This unpredictability would become the Zodiac's trademark. On July 4, 1969, less than a year later, another attack shook the area. Darlene Farron and Mike Mageau were sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo when a man approached and opened fire. Darlene was killed while Mike survived despite being severely wounded. Shortly afterward, a man called the Vallejo Police Department, calmly taking credit for both this attack and the previous double murder at Lake Herman Road. The call was chilling in its casualness, as though he were reporting a trivial event. His knowledge of the crimes left little doubt that he was indeed the killer. The police realized they were dealing with someone who not only craved recognition, but also enjoyed directly communicating his power over law enforcement. This was no ordinary criminal. This was someone who wanted to play a long, twisted game. The game became even more sinister in August 1969 when letters began arriving at 3 Bay Area newspapers. Each contained a piece of a cipher, which when combined formed a cryptogram of 408 symbols. The Zodiac demanded that the ciphers be published on the front page of the newspapers, threatening further violence if his demands were ignored. True to his word, the papers complied, fearing the risk of more bloodshed. Amateur codebreakers Donald and Betty Harden eventually cracked the cipher, revealing a chilling message. The killer claimed that he murdered for pleasure and believed he would achieve a kind of afterlife reward by collecting souls. Yet even in this disturbing confession, he withheld his identity. The message ended with the words, "I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves." The chilling tone confirmed what many feared. This was not a killer who would simply stop. This was someone who sought to become immortal through terror. September 27, 1969 brought another brutal attack, this time at Lake Berryessa. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a day at the lake when a hooded figure appeared. wearing a strange costume adorned with a symbol resembling crosshairs. He tied up the couple and then stabbed them multiple times. Cecilia later died of her injuries. While Brian miraculously survived, the killer left behind a handwritten message on the victim's car door, signing it with his symbol and noting the dates of his previous murders. This attack was different from the earlier shootings. It was more personal, more theatrical, and showed a chilling escalation in his behavior. The costume suggested a killer who reveled in the performance of murder, creating a persona larger than life. He wasn't just killing. He was staging scenes designed to terrify. Only 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, cab driver Paul Stine was shot in the head in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. At first, police believed it was a routine robbery gone wrong. But when the Zodiac sent a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle claiming responsibility, along with a piece of Stine's bloody shirt as proof, the reality became undeniable. The boldness of this crime shocked investigators. Unlike previous attacks in remote areas, this murder took place in a bustling city, and witnesses even saw the killer walk calmly away from the scene. Despite police arriving quickly, the Zodiac slipped away. This incident highlighted the killer's audacity and his ability to manipulate not just the press, but also law enforcement itself. He had proven he could strike anywhere, at any time, leaving the public in a state of heightened fear. The letters continued, each one more bizarre than the last. The Zodiac taunted police for their failures, threatened to attack school buses filled with children, and sprinkled his writings with cryptic puzzles. His ability to hold the entire Bay Area hostage through words alone was unprecedented. The media frenzy only fueled his ego, giving him exactly what he craved: attention. While some believed the letters were the work of a lunatic seeking fame, others feared they were genuine roadmaps to further violence. For law enforcement, the frustration was immense. Despite having eyewitness descriptions, physical evidence, and even fingerprints from letters, the killer remained elusive. Every lead seemed to fade into nothing, as though the Zodiac were always just beyond their grasp. The years that followed, the Zodiac's correspondence grew increasingly erratic. Some letters were coherent and chilling, while others seemed filled with nonsensical rambling. Cryptograms arrived that remain unsolved to this day, including the infamous 340-character cipher, which stumped experts for decades until amateur code breakers finally cracked it in 2020. That message, much like the first, contained boasts of his killings, but no clues to his identity. The ambiguity only deepened the mystery. Was this the same man who had committed the original murders, or were copycats sending letters to keep the legend alive? The uncertainty added yet another layer of fear as the line between fact and myth blurred. What made the Zodiac case particularly challenging for investigators was the sheer randomness of his crimes. Unlike other serial killers who targeted specific victim types or followed predictable patterns, the Zodiac seemed to strike at will. Young couples, a taxi driver, threats to children. This unpredictability not only confounded police, but also heightened the sense of terror among the public. Nobody felt safe because nobody fit a particular profile. He was a killer who could choose anyone, anywhere, at any time, and still vanish into the shadows. Over the years, numerous suspects have been investigated, but none conclusively linked to the crimes. Arthur Lee Allen, perhaps the most famous suspect, seemed to fit several aspects of the Zodiac profile. He lived near the crime scenes, owned a watch with the Zodiac symbol, and had been accused of disturbing behavior. Yet despite circumstantial evidence, investigators never found the proof they needed to charge him. DNA testing later appeared to rule him out, though some still believe he may have been involved. Other suspects have come and gone, each one sparking theories, books, and documentaries, but none providing closure. The truth remains frustratingly out of reach. The Zodiac case has endured, in part because of the mystery that surrounds it. Unlike many serial killers who are eventually caught, tried, and sentenced, the Zodiac slipped through history like smoke. His crimes, his letters, and his riddles have been dissected by law enforcement, journalists, amateur sleuths, and internet communities for decades. Each new generation brings fresh eyes to the case, hoping to uncover what the previous ones could not. Theories range from the plausible to the fantastical, with some even suggesting multiple people may have been involved. The lack of resolution keeps the story alive, a haunting puzzle that refuses to be solved. The cultural impact of the Zodiac cannot be overstated. His reign of terror inspired countless books, films, and television shows, each one exploring the psychology of a killer who thrived on mystery. David Fincher's 2007 film Zodiac brought renewed attention to the case, highlighting the obsessive pursuit of answers by journalists and detectives. The Zodiac has become a symbol of the ultimate unsolved mystery, a dark reminder of the limits of justice and the enduring power of fear. His story resonates because it taps into something primal, the fear of the unknown, of an enemy we cannot see, and of questions that may never be answered. For the families of the victims, however, the Zodiac is not a cultural phenomenon, but a source of unending pain. Decades later, their lives remain marked by loss and uncertainty. Each unsolved cipher, each unverified letter, each new theory only reopens old wounds. For them, closure remains elusive, and justice feels incomplete. Their loved ones were stolen not just by a killer, but by the cruel reality that the killer was never brought to account. The human cost of the Zodiac's reign of terror is what makes the case not just a fascinating mystery, but also a profound tragedy. The Zodiac case also underscores the challenges of criminal investigations in a pre-digital era. Forensic technology was far less advanced, communication between police departments was slower, and coordination often hampered by jurisdictional boundaries. Today, DNA evidence, surveillance cameras, and digital databases might have provided leads that investigators in the 1960s simply didn't have. This gap between then and now only fuels speculation about what might have been had the Zodiac emerged in a different time. Would he have been caught quickly, or would his cunning still have outsmarted modern tools? The question lingers, adding yet another layer to the enigma. In many ways, the Zodiac Killer represents the terrifying power of anonymity. By never revealing his identity, he denied closure to his victims' families and allowed his story to grow into legend. The anonymity was his greatest weapon. He could be anyone, anywhere, at any time. That fear continues to echo, reminding us that sometimes the most dangerous threats are the ones we cannot see. The Zodiac became less of a person and more of an idea, a phantom whose shadow still stretches across California and beyond. As the years passed and the letters eventually stopped, questions remained about whether the Zodiac had died, gone into hiding, or simply lost interest. Some believe he may have continued killing under different guises, while others think his ego would not have allowed him to stop without recognition. The truth may never be known. What is certain, however, is that his name endures, whispered in conversations about unsolved mysteries, studied by criminologists, and feared by those who remember his reign. He achieved what he seemed to crave most, a kind of immortality through terror. Closing the book on the Zodiac Killer is difficult, perhaps impossible. His crimes left an indelible mark not just on California, but on the world. He showed how one individual, through a combination of violence, manipulation, and mystery, could hold millions in fear. The failure to identify him stands as one of the most haunting, unsolved chapters in law enforcement history. The story of the Zodiac is not just about the killings themselves, but about the enduring human need for answers, for justice, and for closure that never came. Even today, amateur sleuths continue to pore over old police reports, analyze handwriting samples, and debate theories in online forums. The hope that one day a breakthrough will finally reveal his identity keeps the case alive. New technology continues to offer possibilities, from advanced DNA analysis to digital pattern recognition. Each discovery sparks a new wave of interest, as though the solution might be just within reach. But as time marches on, the likelihood of definitive answers grows smaller. The Zodiac remains an open wound in the fabric of American true crime. The story of the Zodiac Killer is ultimately a story about the terrifying power of the unknown. He was never caught, never named, and never fully understood. In that void, his legend grew. More than 50 years later, his shadow still looms large, a reminder that evil can wear many masks and sometimes escape justice altogether. The Zodiac is both a historical figure and a symbol of mystery itself, embodying the chilling reality that not all questions have answers. And perhaps that is what makes his story endure. The fear that some monsters never reveal their face, and some crimes remain forever unsolved.